to share your screen?
Yeah.
It is shared. All you
Okay.
have to do is say, next slide.
Okay. The first 7 slides that are shown here are excerpts from an article called "What is Due Process" by Michael Tan. And what is due process? Okay, it's in the Constitution, and it says that the government shall not deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And this legal guarantee takes 2 forms. One is procedural. Next slide. And then one more slide. Procedural due process is that the government is required to follow a set of procedures when it attempts to take these rights away. Okay. It must tell you what's happening. It must quickly provide you an opportunity to be heard and provide a neutral decision maker, i.e. a court. Next slide. So substantive due process means that the government, this is a evidentiary issue. What kind of evidence must the government show? They must give a compelling reason before the fundamental rights can be infringed upon. No matter what process is used, they have to do this. Next slide, please. Harry, chime in if you have anything you want to say.
The only quibble I had, Janeth, is quickly, in the immigration context, they're providing hearings in 2029 right now. So in the criminal context, there's a speedy trial rule, but I'd only quibble with quickly.
Okay, well, that's the trouble, is that one of the due process rights, procedural due process rights, is that something has to proceed with a certain amount of speed, depending upon who is handling it. And the immigration courts are so backed up that it's very hard to give a quick process. Okay. The government cannot restrict or eliminate due process. The 5th and the 14th Amendments explicitly state that no person shall be deprived of these rights. It doesn't say citizen or anything like that. It says no person. That includes everybody who's here in the United States. Due process, of course, is the foundation. Next slide, please. Due process is the foundation of our legal system. We're not a monarchy or dictatorship. Power is derived from the people. Okay, the rest of these, the next 2 slides are not from the TAN article. Okay, how should due process be applied in immigration cases? When a person is detained, they have the right to a hearing before an immigration judge. This requires notice of the right, a reasonable opportunity to consult with an attorney, and the right to be represented by an attorney. Next slide, please. What is different between immigration court and criminal court? Well, immigration cases are considered civil in nature, and therefore slightly different rules apply to them than criminal court. For example, the burden of proof in an immigration court is the preponderance of the evidence. In a criminal case, it's beyond reasonable doubt. So preponderance of the evidence is the level of certainty that the government needs to show in order to proceed. Attorneys are not provided, and the immigrant who is in front of court has to obtain their own attorney and pay that attorney. So quite often they don't have an attorney. Also, at the present time, the process is sort of swift in the sense that it goes very quickly and you don't have a lot of time to develop evidence or to obtain an attorney or things like that. So it makes it more difficult.
Can I ask, so how does that fit with the thing about 2029? That sounds like that's the opposite. Didn't you say 2029 is when?
Yes, I did. I'll clarify. Currently, we used to have 700 immigration judges. Trump has fired about 200 of them, so there's only 500. There's 3.9 million cases that have to be adjudicated. So that's why the dates are way out into 2029. It's just the system can't handle the number of cases that are before them right at the moment. The point is, the process is swift once it starts. It may take forever for it to start.
Next slide, please. Okay, what is actually happening? Well, in a recent class action suit, the ACLU is representing a class of immigrants who were seeking asylum. They approached properly. They either were given, what's called a preliminary hearing to determine if they have a reasonable, a credible asylum claim is what it's called. They all followed the proper procedures and applied for asylum, were found to have a credible claim. Now, at this point, the court, there should be either a decision made whether they're going to be held, detained, shall we say, deprived of their liberty until their case can be heard, or they can be paroled into the United States and given a work permit and allowed to wait until their asylum case is ready to be heard, which might be 2 or 3 years. So this class action is those who have gone through all these proper procedures, applied for asylum, were found to have a credible claim, and were locked up. Anyway, there was no court hearing to decide if they could be paroled. Yes,
Does due process require that they be given a work permit?
No, they have to request it.
they have to request it, yes.
And once they request it, are they required to receive it?
There's a process where they have to go. There's some certain standards that they have to meet to qualify for work permit. Not everybody gets one. It depends on their particular immigration status. If you look at the chart I circulated before the meeting, there's 8 different categories roughly of immigration approaches. So it would depend on where you stood in each one of those.
Okay, but what is happening right now is that ICE is going out and picking up people who have gone through the proper procedures, applied for asylum, gotten a work permit. And in fact, sometimes they are even picked up when they go report to the immigration service, as they're required to do. If they're on parole, they need to go at a certain time and report and show that they're still available for a court hearing. So some of them were picked up at these times when they went in to report. It's my understanding that none of them were provided with any kind of hearing or notice or anything, but they are in detention, and they're being held in detention indefinitely until their asylum claim can be heard, which could be 3 or 4 years, who knows?
Question.
Yes,
Does the immigration process take into account whether these people had, well, let's see, if they followed due process coming into the country?
yes, that's what, I think Harry can speak to that. He said there were, 8 different categories depending upon, yeah.
Vanessa just gave me that.
Oh, thank
That's the only copy.
I know they've been focusing on gang activity and child trafficking and things like that.
That's right. That's what they did in the beginning. At the very beginning, they did concentrate on people who had criminal convictions or were charged with serious crimes and hadn't yet been convicted, but were considered deportable or therefore because they had a criminal charge against them, although it had never been adjudicated. The way a person became an undocumented immigrant can go a lot of different ways. But the same due process should apply to each one of them at the point that ICE decides to take them.
No, that's,
Whether-
Janet, that's not quite true. If the rule used to be if you were, for the last 4 or 5 years, is if you were within 100 miles of the border and been in the country less than 14 days and an expedited process, and only if you articulated a credible fear were you able to stay in, and they could just send you back across the border. The Trump administration has expanded that to anywhere in the country in up to 2 years. So those people have very limited due process rights and may not, other than having a palpable fear evaluation by the border control, there's not any real formal process.
Thanks, Harry. Jeff, you have a question or comment? You're on mute if you do.
Okay.
Okay,
There we go.
there we go. So, okay, so good. I have a question. I want to do a comparative here, if I might. If I get a speeding ticket and I'm, which is definitely a misdemeanor. If I get a speeding, well, not definitely, usually a misdemeanor. If I get a speeding ticket and I get a court date and I refuse to show up at the court date, okay? A warrant is issued for my arrest and I am then likely put into jail, looking for, and have to post bail to get out of jail. So I'm a little unclear on this whole, so in this situation, the asylum seekers got preliminary, it was shown that they did have a case, or they likely had a case, but their actual court date was set up for later. In that case, were they, if they didn't show up for court at that later date, then could they be picked up by ICE, or are they picked up by ICE before that court date? That's my question. And
Well, I
I'm
think sometimes it could be either one, Jeff.
okay.
I'll go back to your traffic ticket though. The most likely thing that happens, they're not gonna allow you to renew your license or renew your license plates. And that's
Okay.
how they get you to pay. They don't bother putting people in jail for speeding tickets. But as far as the immigration situation is once you enter into the United States, you have 1 year to apply for asylum. If you decide to apply for asylum on day 366, you're outside the law and can be subject to expedited removal. If you enter, you have found to have a palpable asylum case, you can be given parole, and you wait until your hearing occurs. Now, it is true that in some cases, ICE has gone in and detained people, but the law has changed a bit. There's the Larkin law that was passed after the young woman jogger in Georgia was attacked by an unauthorized immigrant who had prior histories of shoplifting and whatnot. So they passed a law saying if you've been charged with shoplifting, they have to detain you until your hearing. So the landscape has changed a bit as to when people are detained, and it is the law. So technically, they can detain you if you fall within the ambit of this particular law.
So no, I have some figures here on the detained population by criminal history.
Janeth, let's kind of hold those for the end.
Okay,
And let's try and move on. I'd like to
Okay.
get through the slides if we
Okay.
can, so then we can see the people on the screen.
Got
okay,
So,
3 people with their hands.
so Linda and Wendy, I see your hands up. Is it specific to this slide, or is it something that we can come back to?
Yes, real quick.
Real quick, Wendy.
Was that the Lacey Larkin case that was mentioned about shoplifter?
Yes, correct. It's a Lacey Larkin case.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Oh, good job, Wendy. Yay.
So
Linda?
this is also real quick. My understanding is up to 40% of the people who are undocumented here came in officially on some other kind of visa and then overstayed their visa. How does it work with that?
I think that number might be a little high. The point is if you came in on a visa, you legally entered the country, but you're only lawfully permitted to stay to the term of your visa. Once you go past that, you are an unauthorized person in the country, and the immigration can come and apprehend you, and if you've, in certain cases, can do expedited removal, particularly if you've had any hearing or adjudication that you didn't show up to.
Okay, so let's,
Let me go to the next slide. And talk about how, the class action suit under the ACLU case, how they're being, treated. They had no criminal charges, they had no criminal convictions. And they had followed all procedures and had been given, parole, awaiting their asylum hearing. So, but they were still picked up by ICE and detained. Okay. Why is this a violation of due process? First of all, they're not following their own procedures. They haven't shown a compelling reason why the person cannot be released. Now, for example, the new rule about not releasing people who have a traffic ticket or a shoplifting charge, or they haven't shown up for court, those could be considered compelling reasons. But they haven't even done that. They haven't shown a compelling reason. And we also have reason to believe, we don't know for sure, but we have pretty good reasons to believe that immigrants in detention are being held in fairly crowded, unsafe, and inhumane conditions. And the Department of Homeland Security is not allowing members of Congress to inspect the private prisons in which immigrants are detained. So this is a concern as well. Yes.
Why do we have a reason to believe that?
Because we have people who've been in there who have come out and told us what the conditions were like. We do have a few instances of where we've been able to get in and people have said the conditions are bad. Have you seen videos of the way the bunks are set up in the cages? Mm-hmm. And do you consider, and that's compared to say, is that a humane way to hold people in detention for years?
Is that an improvement or a reduction in standards compared to what was done under previous administrations?
It is a much reduced standard under which they were held under previous.
Okay.
I would defend the administration in the extent that they've started to detain a lot more people, and the capacity to do so and setting up places that can do this in a professional manner is a real challenge. So things aren't particularly good, but part of it is because they're trying to do way too many things at the same time.
Yes, they're trying to detain too many people and in inadequate facilities or facilities that are inadequate to detain the number of people that they want to detain.
Okay.
Wendy has her hand up.
Yeah, this is pretty quick. The number of people they're trying to detain is partly demanded by Stephen Miller, from what I understand. And another thing I hear, which we can discuss later, is that Trump is kind of in cahoots with private prison developers.
We have no proof of that, Wendy.
Okay.
Let's move on. The next slide is,
Janeth, just a sec. Is everybody able to hear well enough? Okay, good. Thank you.
okay. As Harry pointed out, Trump has fired 200 of the immigration judges. There were 700 to begin with. And so Is
that the right one?
No, go to the next one,
That's one
please.
you just read.
Next.
Go to the next one, please. No, back one. That. Oh, yes, here we are. There are too few judges to hear the cases, but that's why they're backed up for years. And there also are not enough immigration attorneys. And in fact, Trump has instructed the Justice Department to give immigration attorneys a hard time to challenge them on their legalities and their credentials and so forth. So it makes it even more difficult for immigration attorneys to practice this law.
Do immigration justices have to be approved by Congress?
No, I'm getting to that. That's the
Okay.
next thing on the list here.
Okay,
Immigration judges, unlike federal court judges, have a degree of independence in their decision-making. However, they are employees of the Homeland Security Department.
No,
Subject
Judith, they're employees of the Justice Department.
of the Justice Department, and they're subject to the authority of the
Attorney General.
They do not have lifetime tenure or anything like that. They're more akin to a magistrate, but they are employees of the Justice Department. And
Judith, can let me try to explain this. Under the Constitution, we have three principal articles. We have Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. Article 3 is the judiciary, which gives lifetime tenure and whatnot. Immigration judges are not Article 3 judges. So they are Article 2 judges that are set up to handle a certain set of cases. They're appointed by the Department of Justice.
report to the Department of Justice.
And they can be fired at will.
Can be fired at will, yes. Okay. Next slide, please. No, go to the next slide, please. Okay, another aspect of this is the detention of families. There are families that are being arrested at this point and detained. And for example, in the most recent big beautiful budget bill, it gave the Department of Homeland Security $45 billion to build new immigration detention centers, including family detention centers. Now, back in 1997, there was a Flores agreement that specified certain specific protections for children who might be held in detention. And some of the requirements, the next slide, please. Children should be released to a family member if possible, may not be detained for more than 20 days. Conditions must be safe and sanitary and held in the least restrictive setting possible and given certain adequate facilities. There also must be adequate supervision, protect minors from others, and children must have contact with family members. Now, this was an agreement back in 1997, which has been followed pretty much until now. But in May, the Trump administration, just a moment, the Trump administration's Department of Justice filed a motion to terminate the Flores settlement agreement altogether and argued that recent legislation, along with agency policies and regulations, rendered the agreement unnecessary.
Okay, you said this agreement, who's the agreement with?
The agreement was with the government. It was a case suing the government about the conditions in which children were held in detention. And it was a settlement that the government agreed. They set up these standards and the government agreed to meet those standards.
Okay, it's a legal settlement.
Yes,
Thank you.
a legal settlement, yes. Next slide, please. In the immigration context, families are actually primarily mothers with children because fathers are housed in separate facilities. These are not whole families held together. One of the things that was established during the Flores settlement was that detention of children has serious physical and mental health consequences. and concludes there's no humane way to detain children and no version of family detention that is acceptable. Obviously, the Flores settlement said there is some way to detain children, but under that settlement, apparently, the current administration is not following it. One further fact, that right now, immigration judges are the same number, I mean, the number of immigration judges that's left after Trump fired some of them, they are under pressure to close cases as quickly as possible. And in fact, in the month of March of this year, they fast-tracked asylum denial at a record pace. And they also closed asylum cases at a record pace, close to 12,000 cases a month. A month? A month. 12,000 cases a month.
Well, this is where Judith and I've had a private conversation on this. We don't know. There's all sorts of numbers, but during the Obama administration, President Obama's administration removed 438,000 people in 1 year, and they were averaging 13,000 to 19,000 cases applied each month. So as to whether this is the largest number of dismissals, it could be subject to debate.
Well, the number I'm talking about is the number of cases that were closed in court. That doesn't necessarily be the same number as the number of people deported, because people are deported without actually having an asylum. They might agree to be deported, or there may not be a pending asylum claim at all, or they might be deported under expedited process.
Removal.
So that the number of people deported does not equate to the number of cases, asylum cases closed in the immigration courts. And I also have these that's like, there's one more slide. Yeah, that's the record place. I also had some numbers about the number of people who are currently detained as of July 13th. With a criminal history, it's I have a percentage here somewhere. Okay, the total detained is 56,816 people were detained as of July 13th. And of those, 36% were a convicted criminal. 31% had some pending criminal charges. Could be shoplifting, or it could be something more serious. And 33% had no criminal charges, either pending or convictions. So approximately a third of the people that they have currently in detention have no criminal background at all, other than the fact that they might have stayed here after a visa expired, or crossed the border without
Station.
yes.
All right, so
Harry, did you have anything to add to that?
No.
PowerPoint and bring them
I-
back up.
I can't hear you.
Will you close the PowerPoint and
Yes.
bring them back up?
Yeah, that's the end of the
Okay.
And thank you, yeah, that was, oh, good, now we can all. All right, I'm sorry I interrupted, but was anxious to be able to see you all on the screen.
Yeah.
So Harry? What would
Yeah.
you add?
Well, I would just point out that if you look at the chart, I took it from people that are US citizens who have full rights and have due process and are not really subject to immigration, to people that have come across the border in different ways, including if you come to the border and have a visa, you can still be denied entry for national security reasons. So there's very little due process in that context. There's less due process involved in expedited removal. These are people that have either been in the country a short period of time or people that have not appeared for the immigration process. I'm happy to answer any questions people might have about the chart.
Well, I want to ask a question about what you just said. So if I heard you correctly, you said that people can show up at the border with a visa, a proper visa, and still be denied access because of other security reasons. That's not new, is it? Is that new?
No, that's the law's been that way. It's just maybe people are being a little more strict. For example, there's been a recent case in the news of a South Korean gentleman who was at Texas A&M doing research on diseases, and he went to South Korea for his brother's wedding. When he returned, he had the green card, but some time ago he had a drug violation on his record, which can be waivable. But I guess ICE has determined, based on that conviction, that he's needs to be removed.
Thank you. Ray, you have your hand up?
Yeah, and just in my opinion, I don't feel it's being more strict. I think it's arbitrary and very much in line with the 3,000 a day that they're trying to capture. That they just arbitrarily define somebody as a criminal without any proof of that, and they're shipped off to Alcatraz or anywhere else. No, I don't feel it's a matter of being strict or enhancing what was done in the past. It's a brand new system that's totally dehumanizing.
Thank you for that perspective, Ray. Hal?
Okay, I just did some quick math. You said that the Obama administration did 56,000 deportations in the first year. At that rate, going through the estimated 20 million people who are here illegally, that would take 356 years to deport everyone. Are there some people that it's important to deport, or should we be prioritizing this differently?
What's your thoughts about that, Harry?
I think that's a very, very good question. There's been a number of polls, and for example, a huge number of the people have been in this country for over 10 years. They've got families, they've got American citizen children, and the question is if they've also been productive members of society. So are these the people we want to remove from our nation, or are we more concerned about people that are not productive, who have committed a criminal offense and probably should not be here? So I think there's a continuum, and I think you're right. When we do this, you have to have, and I would argue with the 20 million, I've heard 13 million, but it's a large number regardless of what it is, that we should be making some judicious decisions as to who we might want to permit to stay in the country, like the DACA group, who were brought over here when they were 3 or 4 years old, have been the only country they know is the United States. Even President Trump has recognized that maybe these people need some special treatment. So it is a very complicated issue. And what we need to do is come up as a society with a means of identifying who should be, so to speak, voted off the island and who should be allowed to remain.
Boy.
I have a question on a different topic, and that has to do with elections. Now, I think I can make the assumption that most people say you should be a citizen to vote.
Yeah.
But having a large number of non-citizens here affects our elections as well. And that is in the sense that when the census goes through, in 2030, the number of representatives will be determined by the total population, not the total citizen population. So that will actually skew the political process for most people for this country in favor of whatever party is favoring the people who are here illegally. Do you have any comments on that?
I do have a comment on that. One thing is that there, in our history, we have never based representation on the number of people allowed to vote. Because when women weren't allowed to vote, they were still counted in the census, and they were still considered represented by our representatives in Congress. And the same was true before we abolished slavery. Slaves were counted, but they were only counted as 2/3 of a person. The number of people. 3/5, okay,
Yeah.
but they were counted and considered part of the population that was being represented by the representative in Congress. So it's not unusual to have people counted for purposes of distributing the number of representatives a state is allowed. So that historically that's happened a lot.
Yeah, the 3/5 was a compromise
I
made
know what's a compromise.
in order, yeah, in order to,
So I'm gonna go and ask, Linda, what's your question, please?
So a few. First of all, I did want to thank whoever put this chart up about the 8 different categories because I found it very helpful. So what you're saying in the one category, the expedited removal with visa holders, that has changed from under 14 days to 2 years now
No,
for
it's
that part.
I think it's under expedited removal rather than visa holders.
Well, it says immigrants in expedited removal and then in parentheses visa holders. So that's what I was clarifying. And then that's it for now because I don't want to.
Ah.
in case someone has a question there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Wendy, what's your question, please?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't have any sound when Hal was talking. Could I hear a summary of that just now? Or is it not a big deal?
It's rather involved. I'll talk to you about it.
Okay, okay. So here's what I wanted to mention briefly, because this is another thing that people may dispute. But there was an open mic accidental recording somehow of Trump telling the president of, I think, of El Salvador, something about build more prisons because the homegrowns are going to come next or are going to be coming. And that, I think, seemed to indicate that actual citizens could start to be deported. Now, that's a really extreme possibility.
It's
But-
also against the Constitution.
Pardon me, Harry?
It's also against the Constitution.
That's what
Yeah.
I thought.
It
So, I
sounds-
mean, because we talked about citizens should not be extradited, deported, detained, whatever. And so I am very concerned that it is possible that that is in Trump's plan. And I do know, maybe not based on the last thing I said, but that there is a gigantic industry of building private prisons that has been going on way before Trump came in, and that teenagers were being entrapped, maybe encouraged to use drugs or even drugs planted on them to fill prisons in the deep South. And I
All right.
think that is documented.
Off
Thank
the
you, Wendy.
track.
I have a question, Tanya?
Yeah, actually, I have a number, but I'm gonna start with one. So, in talking about the fact that there's such a large backlog of cases. And, as Hal pointed out, it's gonna take forever and a day to adjudicate those. What? Can somebody give me an idea of why they're firing immigration judges? Why are they cutting back on immigration judges? And I'll just add on to that, because it is very closely related. Is this a matter of politics and not liking the decisions that those immigration judges are making, and consequently, and is that legal to just fire somebody because you don't like the decision that they made, given that they're a judge? And I guess I address that to Harry and whoever else wants to comment.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the quick answer is that since they're Article 2 judges, not Article 3 judges, they do not have lifetime tenure and can be fired for whatever reason that the administration finds appropriate. Now, one of the big problems with the whole issue is the United States has underfunded its immigration review process. Why would we have 700 judges when they could hire a lot more, but it would cost money? And I would hope that some of the money they got in the big, beautiful bill will be used to increase the number of immigration judges. So you have a more reasonable input. I think if you want, most Americans agree that we should follow the law. And I would argue that if you had more immigration judges, so people's asylum case was heard more promptly, then it would be a fairer system across the board.
Janeth, do you want to add anything to that?
I think that Harry covered it in the sense that these are Article 2 judges, and they report to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice can decide that they are either being too lenient or not strict enough, or making bad judgments and decide that they should be gone. This is not a problem that has just come up. This has been a problem for years under Obama, under Biden, under whoever. This lack of an sufficient number of judges to adjudicate has always been a problem. I just also found an article that where this person who says that although what Trump may be doing is using the system a certain way and sort of trampling on some of the due process rights that we think we are entitled to, he's using the system the way it is, the way it was when he inherited it, and then it has become that because of all the difficulties that have been over the years that have been tried to, this is done and that is done, but they've never come up with a very good solution. And so it's not just Trump that's causing the issues related to immigration. It's the whole system and how it's grown over the last 20 years. And he's just using it as the way he wants to use it. And in some ways, it's more, he's trampling on a few more due process rights in the process, but there have never been a whole lot of due process rights in the first.
Thank you. Now, we got several hands up. I'm gonna real quickly ask this question. I may have missed it. Who appoints these immigration judges?
There's a
Department
Department of Justice, there's a division, I forgot the name of it, but it's basically the immigration judge committee, and they're the ones that oversee the entire system. It's it's just like you have a civil rights division, you have a criminal division in DOJ, there's a separate division that has responsibility for overseeing the immigration system.
Thank you both for that. Jeff, unmute and ask your question.
Sure. I'll ask the quick, easy one first. So lawful permanent residents, okay? In your chart here, you talk about can still be deported for certain crimes and fraud. Can you clarify what frauds have got to have been committed to that? For that?
Oh, sure. Sure,
Yeah.
as you lied on your immigration process. For example, let's go back to World War II, we had Nazi guards that came into the country and didn't disclose the fact that they had been a Nazi guard. And we've actually removed a couple of people based on their fraudulent attestation when they applied for immigration.
So if you were truthful on your application,
Right. If you're truthful on your application, you should not have a problem. But if you lied, then you could be in trouble.
and the certain crimes are national security crimes generally, is that correct?
No, it's sex, it's drugs, it's a
Oh,
variety
really?
of things.
Okay, thank you. That's
So
helpful.
if you're a bad person,
Okay. Thank you.
Shoplifting. Now that they've changed the law, it can be as little as shoplifting, but one of the issues that has come up is whether, for example, a person who is here on a student visa is here lawfully. And in one case, several cases, the State Department revoked their visa without even telling them that they had done that. And then they were picked up and put in detention. That's such an egregious example of how due process was trampled on, in terms of they were not notified their visa had been revoked. And they were given no notice of what they'd done, what had happened. They had no idea what was happening. They were just arrested and put in detention.
but Janeth, a lot of those cases have been there. Those people have been released after court hearings. So
That's right.
they
because
were
had to go to
detained.
court to get out. They had to go to court and they had to fight very hard to get out.
All right,
And
thank you.
some of them are still in there. Not all of the ones that have had that happen to them have been released.
Linda, what's your question?
So so let's go back to the Trump one. Prior to right this period, when people were paroled into the country, what percent of them actually never showed up for their immigration hearings? And then also, what is the cost of keeping people in these facilities now versus the cost of having them paroled into the country? And some of them used to have to wear a bracelet or something like that, my understanding, so that, their whereabouts could be known. It just seems it's a lot more expensive to try to put people in all these facilities and hold them for years till their court date versus what used to happen. And so I am wondering how many people paroled into the country didn't actually show up.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I don't think it's a huge number.
But it's a significant number. There were a number of people who didn't show up, and I think that's the reason, or the reason that Trump is now using, that everybody who is they're thinking of deporting has to be detained prior to being deported, because otherwise they'll disappear.
Thank you. Ray, you have a question?
Well, maybe somewhat of a comment. The bipartisan bill that was going through Congress and looked like it was going to be passed until Trump stepped in and said no to it, would have provided significant funding for more judges and many other improvements to the immigration system. My fear is all the money they're receiving through the big, beautiful bill is going to go towards more detention centers. And that's what we're seeing. They're building them all over the country. The other comment would be the issue of people going to hearings. I drove a lot of people to hearings in Indianapolis, Chicago, other places, and they were treated with utmost respect. I was always impressed. Now people are afraid to go to any hearing. They simply tell me that they can't go because they're going to get picked up and deported, or risk being picked up and deported. So the system has changed.
I think I saw Jeff's hand next.
And Linda put her hand down.
Yeah, mine was in there. I do want to comment on the point that Janeth made, which is why go after so if you go after the valid visa holders who you think are violating, like that kid in Massachusetts or whatever, because of their, because they said negative things about, I'm not sure even what, doesn't, when you tie, you can get out of it, you can get out of it by going to court, but doesn't that further tie up the uh, immigration court system, because you have to hear all those courts, all those things, or is it a different court that they go to when they get
That's
challenged?
a different court. That's an Article 3 court they're going to.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Harry. Very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Wendy, is your hand up? Yes.
So, who goes to the, just as a clarification of what Harry and Jeff just said, who goes to the Article 3 court?
Okay, if you're detained, you would file a habeas corpus petition in a federal court. So this would be an Article 3 court. So the district courts throughout the country would be the venue for those requirements. You would normally file in the location where you were apprehended or where you're being detained.
Thanks. Okay, what I wanted to say is that we know of 2 cases of people. One woman is a graduate student or a professor at Indiana University who went home to Italy, and they were closing the U.S. consulate in Florence. So when she called the embassy, and this also happened to a friend of ours who is a graduate student in Virginia from Italy, when they called the embassy in Florence, the phone was picked up and hung back up right away. The U.S. is closing that embassy in Florence. And these 2 people had visas, educational visas, to return to their jobs. And the younger grad student has she has a TA-ship. So she has a job, a teaching job to return to. And the younger person, I don't think, has gotten her visa yet. The older teacher has heard that her visa has been approved, but I don't think she's received it yet. So the US is making it very difficult for people to get the visas they're entitled to and to get back to their jobs in a timely manner for this academic year.
Well, unfortunately, the immigration system and the visa system is what, I guess I need to make a technical point. We only have one embassy in the country, Wendy. It's in Rome. You're talking about missions or consulates.
Yeah.
A council is only there really to handle business, commercial transactions, and visas. So
yeah, but they're not handling the visas very well.
Well, come now, you've heard about famous hockey people and other sports people having problems with their visas. It's not an uncommon problem, because the visa has to come back to the United States. It has to be vetted with certain national security agencies to determine whether the person is amenable to being brought into allowed to enter the country. So that takes time. So it could be variable. It normally is a bigger problem in less developed countries, because one of the things they want to do is check with the local police to see if you're an axe murderer. And frankly, the State Department, we have problems because we had people that were Peace Corps workers that have worked in countries that didn't have the greatest police criminal system. And for them to be confirmed that they hadn't done anything bad was really difficult. So the immigration, the visa system is a clunky process, and sometimes it works unbelievably quickly, but most of the time it's just slow. And it's not by anybody being mean or evil. It's just the system takes a long time.
Yeah, but when you close a consulate, you're making it take much longer, and then it can become meaner, in my opinion.
Thank you, Wendy. So Tanya, I think Tanya has a question.
Yes. So, Harry, I got a chance to look at your chart. And I think that's very helpful information. But my question to you is, do you think that currently that chart, the way what's laid out in that chart that's what is happening? Are they following those policies or those procedures?
I set out what the law is. Now, there's various people that interpret the law, and they may making different assessments as to precisely what those obligations mean. A famous example of that is frequently somebody is detained and they're removed from the jurisdiction where they were detained to another place, particularly Louisiana, where the judges are a little stricter. So was that done on purpose? Maybe. They're claiming it's only because they had space in the detention center in Louisiana as opposed to someplace else. But could there be more lax interpretations of the law? Certainly. A good example is the Larkin law. It requires people that have been accused of shoplifting to be detained. But in many cases, the Trump administration and DOJ and ICE have not gone and chased those people down.
Janeth, what would you add to that?
I think that the chart here indicates probably what process should be provided to the various classes. And I don't think that amount of due process is in fact being provided, because so many people are being arrested and detained without a hearing, and in order to get a hearing takes, because of the fact that there's not very many judges and they're trying to handle all these asylum cases and get them closed like the Department of Justice wants. They don't have time to hold bond hearings for the 3,000 people that were picked up. And yeah.
Question, what is the punitive resource, or how can a judge be punished if they don't follow the due process rules that you've spelled out?
Judges are not the ones that are not following the due process. Due process is not being followed by ICE, by the detention facilities, when they refuse to let Congress people in to observe the detention. There's a specific statute that, in order to provide some protections to people who are detained, there is a statute that says that Congress people can appear unannounced and should be then given a tour to show what the conditions are in that prison. And they are being, they sort of ignore that. So I would guess that there's a lot of due process rights listed in this chart that are probably not being followed. And they're really, the only remedy is to go to a federal court and claim,
If the rules were applied.
claim that the rules have not, that they have not been given due process, and therefore they should not continue to be detained. And that's an expensive and lengthy process.
Joanne?
Yeah.
Hang on, Wendy. Joanne?
These private detention centers are paid for by our tax money. So they shouldn't be all that private in that Congress should be able to see what's going on. And also I'm concerned that the private detention centers aren't for profit, sucking up some extra tax money that we are paying.
And the big beautiful budget bill that was recently passed specifically allocated $45 billion for new detention centers, and most of those are going to be private. They're private profit, for profit. detention centers.
Isn't there some regulation in there? Don't they have some accountability?
They are supposed to allow Congress people to come in and look unannounced to arrive at the door, and they're supposed to let them in, but they aren't doing that. They are not following the rules.
And they have some accountability about how they're spending their money, that it's not going into their pockets and.
Harry, are you guys online able to hear what Joanne's saying?
Yes, the point is just like anything else, if there's the services that they have to contract for those, they'd have to follow the federal acquisition regulations to create those places. There's normally some standards of what care is supposed to be set out in the contract. Now, whether they're fully meeting that or not, that's an issue for debate, and it's probably situational depending on which facility you're talking about.
Thank you. Tanya, I think you were next.
Earlier, I think that, Harry, you were talking about the fact that part of the problem with the detention centers, there are so many people that are being held that are, you know, in the backlog for the court. But it almost sounded to me like you were saying that, well, that should be an excuse for not having the facilities that, you know, are reasonable for people. Did I misunderstand that, or?
No, well, this is a problem across society. If you look at our prison system, some of the states have 3 times the amount of capacity in their prisons that are permitted. So this is a problem within our own criminal justice system as well as in our immigration system. So certainly there could be some shenanigans going on, but I think that the key thing is just structurally, when you try to build out a detention system, you're going to have some problems. Now, is there some intent to do this to induce people to self-deport? Maybe that could be a possible motive.
Wendy, you have a question?
Yeah. Is it legal for ICE people to not identify themselves, to have their faces covered in masks, not give any identity, and not present warrants when they detain someone?
Janeth, is that legal?
They can detain people without a warrant because they are acting on suspicion or something of this, that this person is an illegal or an undocumented or whatever you want to call them, the person that's here that should not be here. And so they claim they can pick them up. And there are currently some cases where there's been a court cases challenging their right to hide their faces or do this without warrants. But those cases are in their early stages, and the legal system moves at a very slow pace.
Harry, you have anything to add to that?
I would just say that Homeland Security put in a law because of the threats to the agents that they could cover their faces. So whether that is, when that's adjudicated, whether that law is approved or accepted, that certainly will have an impact on how this is resolved.
What about the warrants? It's suspicion? I mean, that seems worse than knowing somebody.
It's status. Their status is an unauthorized individual. So you only need a warrant
that they detain as an unauthorized individual, you're saying?
Right. And you only need a warrant to enter a private area.
Thank you.
Just a point of correction. The reason the agents have asked to wear masks is not to protect themselves as much as to protect the privacy of their families, because their families have been doxxed by some of the opposition groups, and that puts their families at threat. So that's why some of them, and not all, choose to cover their faces.
So it's a personal choice by the ICE agent. Are you saying that, or they're all doing it?
They're not all doing it. If you look at the videos of some of the ICE arrests, you'll see some do and some don't cover their
Thank you.
faces.
Jeff, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I lowered it.
Okay. Lynn?
Yeah, I heard the warrant arrest and the face mask arrest. I didn't hear the answer about identification of who they are.
So Harry, are they required by law to identify themselves as ICE agents?
I don't know. I not an I've done some immigration work, but I don't know all the nitty-gritty details, so I couldn't answer that question. Normally in a US citizen context, you do have to identify yourself as a police officer and provide identification if requested. But that's in a normal criminal or civil process for a US citizen.
Thank you. Jan?
Don't they identify themselves as this is ICE? That's as much as the police have to do. They don't have to say their first name, last name.
Right.
Yeah, their clothes say ICE.
Not
They
all,
are as ICE agents.
sometimes, not all.
All right, thank you. Judith?
I want to know when, they have to use a warrant. And I have heard that there is an official warrant and a non-official warrant. And I would like clarification on that.
They have to have a court issued warrant to enter private property. In other words, they can't come in your house without a warrant
Or without permission.
or permission. If they are working at a business, the business can refuse them access to the property because that business is private property.
Uh,
If there is a parking lot, they can get them in the parking lot because that's not private property. That's,
Janeth, there's a subtle part of that. The ICE officials can go in where the general public can go in. So they could go in and like where people are ordering food, they can go in there, but they couldn't go back in the kitchen.
Okay.
So in the meat packing incident, the company was a private company, a private property, and the ICE had to have a warrant, a court ordered warrant to enter and take those people.
presumably. But if the company was not alerted to the fact that ICE was coming, and there were various entrances, ICE could get in, without asking to come in.
Thank you. Christine?
How does this apply to houses of worship, religions?
Trump has tried to make, I think he did a presidential order or whatever it is, that houses of worship and courts and schools
And hospitals.
and hospitals, yes, were no longer exempt, that they were no longer sanctuary. That ICE could enter all of them.
Wendy?
Well, it isn't after that, it was the executive order.
Wendy, you have another question?
So my other question is, do we know of any instance, and does anybody besides me worry about this? I wonder if there've been any vigilante type people who have dressed up like ICE and just gone to hassle people and then maybe not take them to any of the authorized detention centers, and we would know what happened to those people.
Sounds like a good movie script.
It does sound like a good movie script. Thank you.
There have been reports of such things happening, but there's I have not seen any actual proof of, that's one of those things that is rumored or is suggested might happen. But of course, we might not know about it if it did happen because
And that's what concerns me. So is a badge the main one and only way that people can be sure that it's ICE people they're dealing with? A badge?
Well, Wendy, it's a little more complicated than that because you've got local enforcement that are supporting ICE. There's also, as I understand it, some independent contractors that have been employed by ICE to do captures. So,
And are the independent contractors, they don't have to be trained and or authorized in law enforcement except for this?
I'm sure there was some sort of requirements that they might have had to meet. I don't know what they were.
Uh-huh, thanks.
Jeff, what's your question?
So my question is this. I'm overwhelmed by the number of variables here, okay? Because there's a lot of them. But my question is, what can a person do who has been paroled into the country? In other words, has sought asylum and been paroled. What can a person do who has been here for 10 plus years? I'm going to make that one up, okay? Because I think that's a good indicator. Because I think that how can they keep in this citizen's mind, they wouldn't be the first people that ICE would go pick up. Okay, they might be the last people, and I just don't understand how a person in either one of those conditions can defend themselves at the point of approach, except to file a lawsuit. Is that correct?
Yep, that's pretty much it. The thing is that with the challenge of meeting quotas to detain people, it's easier to go and grab people that are law abiding than it is to go and chase down criminals.
Yeah, and that therein seems to be a, let's say, a misuse of the law to meet numbers. That's my opinion. Okay.
Well, I think the law is there, but the question is, having been a former prosecutor, there's judicial discretion as to whether you pursue a case or not. So am I going to try somebody for spitting on a sidewalk? Probably not, because there's probably more important things to do that would justify public safety. So it's kind of the same deal.
Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, well, Jeff, to answer your question in part, here we have a safety network, and I know it's around the country, but that's providing transportation to our immigrant population because they're afraid to go to work. They're afraid to go to the store, take the kids to school. And so we as citizens have to do our part to provide some protection for them.
Thank you. Al, you have a question?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay.
I think we covered it.
I'm not seeing any other hands up. Oh, Wendy's.
Thank you.
Oh, and Linda as well. So Wendy and then Linda. Oh, Wendy would.
Okay, my only other question is, what weapons do the people from ICE carry, and are they allowed to use them? And what would, I assume that a potential detainee has no rights to shoot these ICE people?
One, they're law enforcement people, so they can carry those weapons that are authorized by their agency. So that might depend, like a city policeman might carry a baton, or an ICE agent may not. They probably do have tasers, and they probably do have sidearms, because if you see the pictures they're carrying those things.
Are they pistols? Basically not, like those assault rifles.
I've
seen
occasionally,
pictures of
I've seen
people-
some pictures with M4s, which are assault rifles, but most people are just carrying a sidearm, at least from the pictures I've seen.
Thank you.
Linda, and then Apple.
So when we had someone in sanctuary in our church, we were trained on making sure that if somebody knocked at the door, ICE knocked at the door, to be able to distinguish between the judge issued warrant and other fake kind of, or lesser authoritative, authoritarian or whatever
All passed.
documents. Yeah. But in any case, what I'm wondering now, for people that actually, for instance, when we had to transport someone to a medical doctor for an emergency, we tried to keep it out of the, public eye, because they could have technically been picked up even then once they're out of the church. So for the other fellow that just talked about citizens, transporting people to work or other places, what kind of responsibility or rights, let's say I was taking someone to a doctor's appointment and I'm on a public road, what do I need to get from somebody stopping the car if I have somebody in there that may not be authorized?
If you're asking me, and I guess you are, I would say I fully recognize I could be arrested for transporting somebody to an immigration hearing. That's a risk I'm willing to take.
Okay, thank you.
That is a great place for me to remind you that next month, we're gonna have two people who will come and speak about their experiences working with folks in immigration. Ray is one of those people, so.
Who's the other one?
Yeah, and we're not done looking for other
Balance.
perspectives on that as well. Apple, what's your question?
Are we out of time or are we over our time limit here?
No.
We are not, we are here till 12:30.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll wait for the,
Till 12:30.
no, to closer. Well, I wanted to ask Harry whether he would be willing to consider the other half of the problem we have with immigration and what the average citizen can do about the employer who is violating law by employing illegal immigrants. Do we lobby the DOJ to start enforcing that side? Do we require people to legitimately use the E-Verify system? Or in other words, we're throwing a lot of people in jail and out of the country for violating our laws. The other half of the equation is people are coming to this country to be employed without documentations they're illegally being employed. That seems to be a whole missing part of this story.
Are you asking about prosecuting the employers?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I think he was trying to do, is that there's two sides of this coin. We're focused on detaining people that are illegally here, but we're not addressing the issue of those who might have employed them. It becomes a real challenge because if you look across industry, 35% of healthcare is provided by unauthorized immigrants. A huge chunk of the construction industry is supported by that. And I think a large number of people in the food industry. So the question is, as we address this illegal immigration problem, how do we balance that with addressing the issue of people employing unauthorized people? And what do we do to make sure our economy runs so that people can put bread on the table and find a house?
I'd like to hear Janet's perspective on that question as well.
There is obviously something to be there's a balance here. As I understand it, E-Verify is supposed to be used to verify whether a person can legally work. There are a good number of people who will pass E-Verify because they have a work permit, because they've been paroled. They were given what was called temporary protection by a president or something, and or various other ways they can claim to be here legally or have some kind of authorization to work, so that. And sometimes people fake their IDs, but sometimes the E-Verify system just doesn't work properly. It's not infallible, put it that way.
And to add, E-Verify is only required by be used by federal contractors. When it comes to individual businesses, it's a different story. It's not obligatory.
How?
Yeah, 2 points.
Harry?
One, two points. One, the employing, and I'll call it employing, but it's not really full employment of immigrants without benefit of legal status, is that employers make more money that way. A farmer can't sell $5 watermelons. I used this expression a couple of weeks ago, without using improper labor. He pays them less. He profits from that because he can sell to Walmart, and Walmart can sell $5 watermelons. Those watermelons might be $10 or $12 or $15 if he had to employ those people legally, because an employer pays about double what the wage earner gets in federal taxes and other federal requirements. It's called the burden rate, and it's a standard part of employment. So they're avoiding all that. They don't have to put up with the Social Security BS. They don't have to put up with any of that. So the employer's making off like bandits at the expense of people here without legal status. The other point I wanted to bring up is that the government focus on, I'll call them illegal immigrants, is that they want to get the people who are involved in the drug trade, in gang activity, and believe me, there's a lot of gang activity among that group, according to legal sources. And the government and ICE has stated that their intent is to go after the lawbreakers and the people running the child slavery across the border, or child prostitution, the drug trade, and the other illegal activities. It is not to pick up the guy who works at Subway, who's here without benefit of legal status. But if they happen to be chumming with them, and the government has a raid where they're legitimately going after these gang members and drug runners and slavery people, then they'll be brought in as well. And you know, a catch is a catch. So if they catch somebody here illegally hanging with the wrong crowd, they're in a good chance of being deported.
Apple, did you have a follow-up?
Oh, yes, sure. Two, actually. I think Harry said something about only federal contractors required to use E-Verify. I was under the impression that if any business that has 10 employees is required to use E-Verify. Am I wrong about that?
But they don't always.
My understanding is, and I'm not an expert on this, Jim Robb, who sits on the National Citizens Committee, he would know the answer. But Jim was the one that said it only applied to legally to federal contractors. Some states may require it, but Apple, I'm not 100% sure, so I'd rather not give you a definitive answer because I don't know.
So my follow-up is, I was talking to somebody in the construction business, and his excuse, his pass for avoiding this issue was he said, we hire crews. And I had this, that paused me for a while, and I had to think, well, gee, isn't that gang activity? Isn't that engaging in human trafficking, where you have some agent that goes up, gathers people up, and you supply them to somebody else to work? I mean, that just blatantly looks like gang activity to me, human trafficking.
Well, Apple, it may not be human trafficking, but a way of avoiding legal responsibilities if you can claim they're independent contractors. So if I'm an employer and I hire you to send me a crew of 10 people to do drywall, it's your responsibility to make sure that they're meeting all the rules. I don't have to do it because I'll probably have my contract with you a requirement that you meet all the rules.
Okay, I'm gonna get some, oh, Janeth, you have a.
I wanted to address Hal's point that sometimes, people are caught up in what are thought to be gang activities. It's my, understanding, my belief that people are being picked up who are claimed to be gang, or who the government claims to be gang members based only on very slim evidence, such as, well, they had tattoos. And so I'm wondering, and this is a case where due process is so critical. If the government is claiming that they are gang members, why do they not charge them with a crime, take them to a court, let a court determine whether they are a gang member, then they can detain them. But they don't want to do that. They want to take them directly from the street because they have tattoos and send them to a prison in El Salvador.
So I'm gonna go to Linda and then Wendy, and then we're gonna give Janeth and Harry a minute to kind of wrap up, and then we'll be about out of time. So Linda?
So I have a few comments that are different than what was just talked about. I do think that employers hiring people who are unauthorized here is partly obviously for them to make a lot more money, but I think we also have to say that we are a consumption society, and a big responsibility lies with us, because they have done lots of research to show that when people are given an option of buying a lower priced item made through lower priced, workers, or the true value of a product made with fully paid workers with full benefits, 9 times out of 10, they will go with the lower priced one. So that puts some of the responsibility not just on the employers, not just on the unauthorized workers, but also as all of us. We demand lower prices. And then secondly, I do have a difference in understanding here about, the comments about the majority of unauthorized people in this country are affiliated with gang activities or are criminal. My understanding is that the research has shown the exact opposite, that the vast, vast majority of the unauthorized people here are actually law abiding. They're not engaged. In fact, they have a lower criminal rate of participation than native born people. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in.
Vanessa? Hey, Vanessa. Do you want me to go now, or are we on a pause for a reason?
You're muted, Vanessa.
You're muted.
I've been muted all along.
Okay, go ahead, Wendy.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Okay, I have a question about what is E-Verify, and is it related to the system wherein people coming in and out of the country, or maybe even taking domestic flights, have our pictures taken so that our identity is recorded, our travel is recorded? That's my first question.
Okay, Wendy, E-Verify is a separate system.
And what does it do?
It supposedly is a compilation of documents where a business can provide names, social security numbers, or other identifying data to confirm that the person is lawfully in the country and therefore could be employed.
And
Okay.
in our,
Yeah.
all employers need to do I-9s, not just federal employers.
So is that I-9 the E-Verify?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, thanks. And
Wendy, that, we're gonna move on, Wendy.
I
Apple?
did have, you don't want me to ask my second question?
No, thank you. Let's move on. Apple?
So the $5 watermelon, we hear this excuse that we won't be able to afford watermelons if they're picked by verifiable. I'd like economic justification for that statement. That how much more would watermelons cost if we strictly adhered to open labor market standards?
American watermelons.
They won't be available. They're rot in the field.
So I've heard the suggestion that Americans won't do these jobs, but what the real issue here is the rate that they're willing to pay for people to pick watermelons. They want to set prices for this labor. Am I not correct about that? Isn't this price fixing?
There are California farmers that on record are saying they have offered a much higher wage rate and still couldn't get US citizens to do it, or Anglicans.
Do we know they're telling the truth? Do we really know that? Are they? It's like this whole business about H-1B visas. Is there really proof that they can't hire Americans, or are they just denying that they can?
I love that kind of thinking and the path that it could put us on, but because of time, I am going to ask Harry first and then Janeth for some final thoughts about today's topic.
Well, I want to thank everybody for the really good questions. I think this is as is evidenced by our scope of our discussion, it's a complicated issue. And there's probably right answers on both sides. I think most people would agree that the laws of the United States should be respected, but in enforcing those laws, we should do it in a humane and reasonable way. So I think our goal should be, to try to identify how we can accomplish those tasks as we continue this conversation on immigration.
Thank you, Harry. Janeth, what final words do you have?
I think I agree with Harry in the sense that we need to determine what issues are the most critical. And I think that we've touched on a lot of cases where due process under the immigration court system is not being followed. And we need to find a way to allow due process to be followed in immigration issues as it is in other courts. And therefore, I think what we need to do is find ways to improve the immigration court system to be able to function properly. I think that's the crucial point here. And instead, we're putting our money into hiring ICE agents and building detention centers. We should be putting our money into hiring and training immigration attorneys, immigration lawyers, and trying to improve the system that way.
So let's request, could we have that thing that Harry put out, could we have it, get that in an email?
Yes, and
Because
Dorothy,
we weren't able to see it.
Dorothy, I sent that to most of the people. I just forgot that you were going to come.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sorry, but yes, I will send it out. And then Janeth is also willing to send out her PowerPoint.
Yeah,
if you're
I can
interested in
send out
that.
PowerPoint.
So I can send that to you as well. So everybody give a Braver Angels thank you for Harry and for Janeth's willingness to be our speakers today. And I want to give us another wave of Braver Angels for all of us that came and participated in such a great Braver Angels way. And I thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again next month when we talk with people about how they have actually interacted with immigrants in their own communities. And then Linda has put in a message, even if we wanted to pay fair wages, there are not enough actual workers to fill the open spots. So Apple, you touched on a topic that should come up sometime. It's the one that we want to talk about. All right. Thank you. And Jeff says, thank you very much to Harry and Janeth. Very informative and good discussion. Great discussion within the team. I agree. All right, Linda says thanks, and I'm gonna log off the Zoom. So appreciate you being here, and we will hopefully see you all the next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.